Hello. Hi everyone. I think my microphone's a little bit loud. Welcome to Q2 Q&A. Obviously, last week I did the Q2 performance update. That's now up on YouTube if you haven't watched it yet, and you care about what we did during Q2 and what we have planned for Q3. Go and take a look. But otherwise, basically, this is a stream pretty much dedicated to answering questions. You don't have to be copying me. Anyone can ask a question. Basically, just start typing them and I'll start answering them. That's pretty much how this works. In terms of time, normally I go for about 3 hours, but I'm probably going to go a bit shorter than that today. So I'm going to aim for 2 hours, optimistically. I think people are starting to run out of questions, maybe. So hopefully things go pretty smoothly. Yeah, and I'll try and answer your questions. If we run out of questions, then there's a bunch on eToro that I'll try and get to as well. I'll probably do those at the end. Once I think we have maybe 15 minutes left or so, I'll go through those simply because I told all of them that I would answer them, so I can put a nice timestamp in the video and tell them where to check for questions that were asked on eToro. But please don't ask any more on eToro. Just keep them in here. It'd be a lot easier for me. And I've realised I've placed my chat in a place that's probably going to break my neck while I try and read them, so I'm just going to move it and then we'll start. He says, okay, that's a bit better. First question. Thoughts on crypto? Is the bull market over for 2021? Probably not. Probably not, I don't think. There's an awful lot of things that could really make you pretty optimistic about the state of cryptocurrencies. I did say in Q1 that I expected there to be a correction during Q2 or Q3. In my head, this is that correction. Coming back to like 30k is roughly what I expected. Maybe I could have traded it a little bit better, but I was aware that this is a pretty likely thing to happen, and I still think that there's more upside to come in the second half of the year, especially because we may see some kind of clearer signs on exactly what's going on with inflation by then. We might not, but that's one potential cause for Bitcoin to possibly do well, although it hasn't shown too much correlation so far. The other thing I think is if you look at all of the metrics and you look at the data about the number of wallets, you look at how various crypto exchanges have been doing. We now have obviously Coinbase who have IPO'd, so they should give us some good insights into how the crypto market's looking as well. So yeah, there's quite a bit of information that we can kind of look at, and so far, yes, it's dropped off a bit from the highs at the start of the year, in terms of the kind of volume of trading and things like that, and obviously the prices. But I think that the institutional interest is still there. There's still some really exciting stuff happening in the fintech space as they're kind of starting to adopt it, and NFTs and things like that. And obviously we have the Ethereum hard fork coming up as well soon, so that's going to be pretty big catalyst potentially as well. So yeah, I'll be looking at like probably Q4 really, or maybe the tail end of Q3 before things start moving up again. But that's kind of where my expectations are for cryptos. Do you take care of your family financially? I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by family. I pay for myself, my girlfriend, and my cats. And sometimes I buy my other family members nice things. Yeah, maybe I'll do more in the future, but at the moment, it's pretty much just me and my girlfriend that I'm funding the lavish lifestyles of. But I didn't start investing as someone with a lot of money, so I've spent that money buying a house. I first started off with a mortgage and paid down the mortgage, and just this year I bought a new house that's bigger and much more kind of in line with what I kind of really want for longer term. And obviously, I want to keep some money in the bank, and I have a pension and stuff that I've got to be topping up, and a lot of money gets spent on tax. But I think it is starting to get to the point where perhaps I can start using some of my own money to help family and friends more as well. So it's a nice position to be in. But I'm kind of pessimistic about the future. So to some extent, I kind of want to hoard a little bit, protect myself against the future. And also, this is a really insecure job as well, so it's pretty important to keep a bit of a safety net. What are the risks that will change your mind from being 100% long only stocks? I think really I'll be looking for another kind of big black swan event. It's obviously very difficult to spot a black swan, if which is kind of ironic because you'd think a black swan would stand out from all of the white swans, wouldn't you? But yeah, I think that's really the thing. I mean, the last time I did it obviously was when COVID hit, and I was cautious at various points in between, but never too much. Maybe up to 10% kind of short against long in the portfolio, or maybe up to 10 or 15% cash at certain times. And I do kind of position into safer stocks sometimes as well, and I'm positioned more for dividends and things like that. But yeah, realistically, I don't see anything that's like really standing out on the horizon. I mean, the inflation thing is obviously still a kind of big ongoing thing. But whether or not that really kind of manifests into me moving into a really defensive position, I think that's pretty unlikely at the moment. But it's still too early to tell, really. I think most investors, if they were honest, are gonna admit that they're basically just playing this by ear. And we had Christine Lagarde speaking earlier today about the state of inflation in Europe, and their measures that they've put in place to keep the economy afloat. And yeah, pretty much I think most of the big investors, most of the big funds probably even are just kind of watching those and watching the various consumer indexes come out, and industry indexes. That's the wrong word, but pretty much just waiting for those to come out and using those to measure what's going on. But it's just a rolling thing, really. For the time being, everyone's still a bit on edge, so we just keep looking at the numbers and seeing how they go. Jay is streaming time to short the market. Yeah, that sounds about right. Every time I stream, the market goes down. Peloton's going down at the moment, so there you go. I have a question. Is your head warmer or colder than someone with hair today? I think it's way warmer. I used to have hair, obviously. Most humans do. As a very Mark Zuckerberg kind of response. Yeah, no, I think I sweat profusely from my head. It's awful. I sweat more from my head than like anywhere else. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, no, being bald is not fun in the sun, and you got to put sun cream on your entire head. So yeah, you go through that stuff pretty quickly. When will your copy block end? Yeah, I mean, I probably should have preempted the entire video with this question, because this gets asked of basically every single day. Yeah, there's nothing on the horizon on when it's going to end, to be honest. And there are still quite a few kind of speed bumps that I'm kind of working to navigate past with eToro on a daily basis in terms of liquidity, and making sure that everything stays smooth for all of the copiers that I currently have. Even though I've been losing copiers because I've been making profit, and also because some copiers are adding funds as well. My AUM is basically very slowly going up. So I'm not going to be below the limit that eToro set anytime soon. So really, it comes down to if eToro do some big infrastructure upgrades in terms of behind the scenes how they trade, whenever we execute trades, giving more options on trading and things like that. Not stock options, not options markets, but more variations on types of orders and things like that, for example. And until they do that, I think it's pretty unlikely that it's going to get lifted, to be honest. So, yeah, your best bet probably is to look elsewhere. There are other good investors on eToro, so I'd recommend having a look through them. Some good content on YouTube. Copy Traders Club podcast and Felix Valex's YouTube channel and a few others that make good content to help you find good popular investors. But yeah, that's really all I can say. I mean, there is nothing more to it than that. It's just a case of waiting for the moment. Is this the Peloton fan club? I mean, pretty much, yeah. This is pretty much the Peloton fan club. I mean, it's dipped down a bit today. It's actually testing a moving average. Looking at the chart, I've got the chart up in front of me at the moment. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of Peloton still. We definitely one of the best performers over the past over the past year, to be honest, and still one of the biggest parts of the portfolio. And their recent announcement around potentially creating games that you can play on the Peloton as well is really, really cool. And actually something that I suggested that they could compete with the Zwift more and kind of do that sort of a thing, but I didn't expect something quite as abstract as this. But either way, I'm a happy investor. And hopefully all of you guys are as well. What are your thoughts on Nano, the cryptocurrency? I met the founder of Nano, and we were wearing almost identical shirts, and we took a selfie, and we were in almost identical shirts. It was quite funny. I really like Nano as a project, but I'm not sure how much of a future it's got at this point, to be honest. It seems to me like a combination of stablecoins and real utility coins are actually where the long-term value is in crypto and obviously DeFi and things around that as well. I'm not sure how much room there is actually for a large number of just cryptocurrencies, the original crypto. I don't think that there's room for very many of them. So Nano's got an uphill battle. I'm not sure that I would rule it out from happening, but I would say that it looks pretty unlikely that they're going to have long-term success. But I really like what they built and how they designed it, and I like the community. So it is what it is. I probably wouldn't be investing too much in it, though. I wouldn't make it a big part of my portfolio if I held any. Which, disclaimer, I don't currently. Are you allowed to share your opinion on FTCV here on the stream? And if so, could you do so, please? No. Well, yes. I mean, I can tell you what I think about eToro as a company, but I can't tell you anything about my thoughts on if it's good value or a good stock to buy or anything like that. I still think that eToro is an amazing, innovative company. Really like Yoni and the team. I've known a lot of them for a long time now. Been to their offices in Israel. Yeah, I like everything that they're doing. I still think eToro's got a bright future. I still hope to be part of it and kind of continue on the journey with them. But yeah, that's basically all I can really tell you. What crypto coins are you most optimistic about? Will you be buying more now, given we are close to the dip? Yeah, I've thought about adding more to the portfolio. I mean, obviously, I hold a bunch of crypto myself outside of here, but I have thought about adding more. Ethereum is the one that I'm still the most bullish on, really, at the moment. I think the upcoming fork and then the kind of long-term vision with ETH 2.0. Yeah, I think there's a lot of upside potential for it. Whether or not now's the right time, I'm not sure. So I think, at least for the time being, I'm probably going to be waiting until the end of earnings. But it is something that I'm actively thinking about if I should start buying again now. Maybe ramp back up towards maybe 6 or 7% portfolio, and then again further once I'm kind of more confident on it. But at the moment, yeah, I mean, I could see myself maybe adding a few positions in the next few weeks, possibly. It really depends how earnings goes um, and what other opportunities I see out there. I guess I don't want to be too early. With the recent heat waves, floods, extreme weather in the world, do you think we are close to or even past the tipping point in the fight with climate change? That's a good question. I think we're closer to it than we think we are. I really do. Anyone, if you follow me on Twitter, username is just Jaynemesis, the same as on eToro. You'll see that I tweet about climate change quite a lot, and it's because I'm pretty pessimistic about it, to be honest. I mean, the business world is moving, investors are moving. ESG is 3 years ago. The idea of running ESG portfolios was pretty out there, like not really out there. Obviously there were people doing it, and FTSE for Good and those kind of portfolios and stuff were in existence then. But in the past, like 2-3 years, it's really accelerated, and it's something that investors are very, very keen on. I think I saw a research paper actually from Bloomberg or something, and it was like something like 50, or I think it was like, I actually think the number was 57%, but I'm not sure. I think it was 50 to 60%, let's say, of retail investors said that environmental concerns were part of their decision making process for picking stocks. So that was, that's pretty interesting, and I think that's only going to increase, right, as more and more millennials start investing, and they have more and more money to invest and more influence on the market, and then Gen Z as well, who are starting to invest now. I think it's at the forefront of both of those generations' minds, because they're the generations that are going to be hit pretty hard by this. But in terms of where we are in terms of the tipping point, I honestly think probably the tipping point is going to be around 2030 or so. And I think realistically, we need to be pretty close to carbon neutral globally by then. And I mean, it's possible, but it's politically, it's probably not possible to hit it by then. And so then it just kind of becomes more, how do you dampen the effects of it, and how do you work on a long-term solution to reverse it, which is possible through all sorts of very fancy techniques of pumping horrible gases into the atmosphere and basically kind of creating a purposeful smog to cut out the sun. Yeah, I mean, it's all very depressing. But yeah, I think there's more of this to come, unfortunately. And you would hope that the fact that there are floods in China, there are forest fires in Chile, and obviously the US, all the way up the west coast, pretty much into Canada. In northern Russia, there are forest fires, flooding in Germany, in the UK, in Belgium, yeah, Spain's been having a heat wave. Yeah, like there's it feels like there's very few areas of the planet that are untouched at the moment by some pretty extreme weather, and yeah, I think that's going to continue. So, yeah, basically, invest smartly, be on the correct side of history, hopefully. Let's see, more questions. Do you think the market crash will happen in the next year or two? No. I tweeted this on Twitter actually, as well, as I do, tweeting on Twitter. Yeah, I actually think the next big catalyst and the next big market crash will be upon the realization that we are very close to the tipping point, as a result of seeing a lot of potentially like kind of small to medium-sized ecosystem collapses and extreme weather events. So realistically, based on what I just said, I suspect we'll probably see that maybe like 2025 to 2030 is when I would start expecting, the chances of that kind of thing happening will be increasing by then. Thoughts on Tattooed Chef? I haven't looked at them since I last invested in them. I mean, on paper they're good. I think it's an increasingly crowded space, and honestly, as a vegan, I've noticed that a lot of the stuff that I'm eating these days is made by the likes of Unilever, P&G, the big food companies. So I think it's an increasingly competitive space with pretty low margins. It's a very in-demand market, which means that the valuations are pretty high. So I think, it's pretty hard to justify investing in that space. I haven't looked at Tattooed Chef specifically in a while, so I can't comment too much. I know that there are quite a lot of people that really like the stock, but for me, it's not one that I plan on investing in the near-term future. The only company that I'm really interested in that space at the moment is Oatly. So Oatly is the only one publicly listed, at least, that I'm really watching. There are a few private companies that I'm still watching in the space that I think are doing interesting things, but and maybe they'll IPO in the future. But for the time being, that's what I'm looking at. Do you recommend adding funds to you right now, or should I wait and buy low if a correction happens? Well, I mean, if you add funds now, you can't add using copy open trades anymore. So your funds will gradually be kind of seeping into the portfolio as I open new positions over time. So it'll kind of ramp upwards or ramp upwards. There you go. Cameras backwards. So yeah, you kind of need to. I don't think there's much point in timing it, essentially, because that could take 3 months, that could take 6 months. It depends how quickly I'm moving the portfolio around and what's going on. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't really make too much of a difference, to be honest. Yeah, that's my opinion on that. Can you bring in one of your cats? I can't. I'd love to bring in one of the cats, but unfortunately, we've just sent them to a marvelous cat hotel, or cattery, as most people would probably call it, because we're driving up to the Lake District tomorrow for our staycation. So, yeah, the cats aren't here. Sorry. I would love to show you the cats, but they're not here. Top 5 long-term stocks. I don't know. Check my portfolio, I guess. To go off the top of my head, Peloton, Microsoft. Still quite like Twitter, AMD, ABB. Really like ABB. Orsted Energy. Let's see, who else? Who else do I really like at the moment? I mean, those are probably the main ones. Ford. I like Ford. It depends how long term is, really. Because if you're going really long term, then I'll just say something like Microsoft and Google. But thanks for letting us know a bit of personal stuff. It's nice to see you. Distant person on eToro. Know a bit more about me. Yeah, I mean, you can, within reason, you can ask me anything. I'm not going to tell you my PIN for my debit card or anything like that, but yeah, I'm happy to answer just random questions about life and stuff as well. I personally, I think if I was copying people on eToro, then I'd like to know more about people, especially if you've been with them for a long time. You want to build up a kind of connection, really know what they're about, because when you copy someone, you're copying. You're copying their decision making skills and their ethics and their kind of outlook on life, really. All of that plays a part in how someone invests. So it's good to know that I like cats. What's your view on the future battery market? Do you still believe Tesla is the major player? Toyota, Ford, QuantumScape, seem to be very competitive. Yeah, so I actually think, to a large extent, the discussion around range, I think, is going to kind of come to a close in about 2 years' time. I don't think people will be talking about range anymore, because it will already be good. Yeah, you'll be able to improve efficiency, but when you go and buy a car, people don't really talk about the MPG that often. It's not a core motivator in what makes you decide between, you know, Ford Focus or I don't know, Skoda, whatever. Yeah, so I think that's going to end, and I think the reason that's going to end is because charging infrastructure is improving. Batteries are already pretty much getting to the point where you don't actually need to, you know, battery anxiety is pretty much becoming a thing of the past, especially for the bigger cars, but not so much for the smaller ones. Um, so I don't think it really matters that much, and you know, 10% difference in Tesla over, you know, Volkswagen or whoever it is, or SK Innovation or whatever, you know, it's going to be more or less meaningless, you know, and really it will be the other areas of the vehicle that decide on, you know, people buying them and the companies and stuff. Obviously, there's still like, you know, an advantage in terms of profit and things like that, and as I said, how efficient they are to drive. But in terms of like the range debate, I think that's going to disappear quite soon, sooner than most people have realized. So, yeah, I'm actually not following the battery space as much now because of that. I'm pretty confident on that conclusion. I mean, obviously, there's still going to be lots of money in it and things, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily where the money is in investing now. Or really what people care about that much. I mean, maybe that means that there will be money to be made because nobody will be looking at the space. But for the time being, that seems to be where a lot of people are focusing their attention. So I prefer to focus elsewhere somewhat. Do you invest in the housing market? Uh, no, not really. Uh, as for why, it's just not something that I think. It's quite a tricky thing really to predict properly. I mean, it depends on which country you're in and stuff, and but like, you know, politics plays a big role in how the market does, the housing market does, as obviously does the wider economic conditions. So yeah, it's not something I don't really look at REITs or you know, home builder stocks that much. I don't invest in property myself, apart from, you know, where I'm living. Uh, and yeah, I also, for me, it's slightly questionable morally. You know, if you should really be profiting out of something that is essential shelter for people. It's not so bad if it's like, you know, offices and factories and things like that, but certainly like residential stuff, and yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. That I don't mind so much in investing in, like, you know, home builders potentially, but even then, you know, I think there's other more interesting areas of the market to be investing, to be honest. Yeah. If you had to copy three people on eToro, which ones would you consider? I mean, I've given some recommendations before. As I say on my Discord regularly, I'm not really allowed to kind of pick favorites. Uh, because, you know, I have a lot of copiers, and, you know, it could kind of lead to unfair advantages and stuff. And also, like, you know, that like, when I say there are a lot of good traders on eToro, I mean, I'm not joking. If I think if I were to be copying people, I'd be copying 20 people easily, just because there's so many people that I like and that I trust and that I think are making interesting decisions and have interesting thought processes and stuff. So yeah, like there's a lot to choose from. I'd say, I mean, most people that are in the elite or above tier are pretty good investors. Uh, so yeah, it depends on what you want from them, really, I guess. Um, yeah. Uh, how many years do you expect Peloton to keep growing? Uh, it's very difficult to say. I think they've got very strong year-on-year growth remaining for at least the next 5 years. I mean, you've got to consider that, you know, currently they're basically only selling in US, Canada, UK, Australia, and so, you know, they've got all of Europe to expand into. They've got all of Asia to expand into. Um, those are still going to be sizable markets, even for something that's kind of aimed more towards like the luxury end of the market. Those are still going to be massive markets for them. So when you consider that, I mean, the amount of growth they've got kind of on their doorstep in terms of like the size of the market is huge. And then when you also kind of factor into that the different branches and avenues that they could take as part of their business model. I mean, whether it's creating new treadmills or weights benches or something like the Mirror that obviously is kind of a competitor, or if they want to start moving in the direction of actual gym ownership and going down that route, or partnering with someone, or mergers and acquisitions in that kind of direction. I mean, yeah, there's an awful lot of potential. So yeah, I mean, I would probably bet on 10 years worth of growth, to be honest. Like a good double or even triple digit growth some years. Yeah, pretty bullish on them. Thoughts on Nanodimension? So you made a quick day trade recently. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I like them. I keep toying with whether or not I want to hold them long term or not. I don't really, I can't really get my head around where the big demand comes from over the long term. Because really it's kind of a niche product, right? Like, how many processes do you make where you are modifying the design or slightly tweaking it regularly enough for their business model to really kind of make sense for you as a consumer of their technology and their product? And there's not that many markets. I mean, really, and there's like, it depends. Like, and the other thing is like a large chunk of their sales also goes into the weapons industry as well, because they're one of the people that do require that kind of customizability. So I think because of that, that makes me a little bit more nervous around it, and if I really want to be part of it or not. So yeah, I'm pretty on the fence with them, to be honest. But I saw an opportunity for a quick trade, so I took it. And as I said, like, I'm on the fence. Maybe I'll make up my mind a bit more in future, but yeah, I kind of need to investigate more who their consumers really are and understanding the consumers better. When will I stream some gaming content? Or some gaming ecosystem like Engine? Yeah, I don't know. Don't know when I'm going to do that. Maybe in the future. Certainly not in the. Probably not this year, to be honest. I don't really play that much gaming wise. Mainly just Trackmania at the moment. So it would be pretty boring unless you like watching Trackmania, I guess. But yeah, no plans at the moment. I mean, I've got too much going on, really. New house, studying for CISI exams, and obviously looking after the portfolio and all the rest. So yeah, I don't think I'll be doing that anytime soon. When I do, I've got to be careful to kind of separate that out from this. I don't want all of my copies being alerted that I'm streaming or something, and then to come in and just see me playing games necessarily. Like, I have to make sure that it's kind of sensibly segregated. Any thoughts on Cdworld? No, not really. I mean, I'm not particularly bullish on the cinema chains generally, regardless of which one it is. I quite like IMAX because I feel like they have a bit more of a USP. But generally, and I feel like the kind of more luxurious end of cinemas, I think can possibly survive. But I think realistically, cinemas are still going downhill. And I haven't really found a good long-term solution on making their business model kind of sustainable. So, financially viable over the long term. So, for the time being, pretty bearish on it. Not something that I would invest in. What are your thoughts about Bitcoin? Price going to rise in the future? Yes, I think so. Probably towards the end of the year. Did answer a question about crypto earlier. Yeah, I think later in the year. Although, as I said then, there are other cryptos that I'm a bit more bullish on than Bitcoin. But I still think that Bitcoin's got a good future ahead of it. Where do you read the questions that you answer? I can't see them anywhere in Twitch chat. Yeah, Twitch. The thing that you're seeing on the screen is going to be behind. I need to figure out a better solution for it, but for the time being, that's the easiest. So that's just what I've gone with. At least people can see which questions are being asked, even if I don't answer them until like an hour later. But that's the way I do it for the time being. But yeah, as you can see, I'm reading your comments. So. Do you still expect growth on Shopify if their P is over 150? People were talking about that on my Discord earlier today. I think I saw. Was it today? Or it might have been yesterday. Yeah, I closed out some Shopify this morning actually. I've been contemplating if I want to get out for a while. It is very expensive, but you've got to remember that this was at a price earnings ratio of I think it was over 1,000 about 2 or 3 quarters ago. It was over 1,000, and yet when their earnings came around, they delivered, and the PE ratio came down. It's very hard to tell when these companies stop. You know, I mean, people thought the same thing about Amazon, the same thing about Netflix, although Netflix potentially is starting to hit that point now. Given their earnings this week. But yeah, like eventually you saturate the market and you run out of growth, and then you have to kind of play around with margins, or you have to move into new markets or whatever it is. And eventually they're going to hit that point. It seems. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but I think that it's certainly not something that I would make a large part of the portfolio because I do think that there is risk there. Quite old question. Jay starts from the top. Thanks answering them, Chris. Are you going to rebalance the portfolio anytime soon? Active copiers could add more funds to the copy. No, not anytime soon. Part of the reasoning for that is that I have real problems with liquidity on a few things. So I've been trying to cycle positions in a couple of stocks for a few months and have been unable to due to liquidity. So I wouldn't be able to open the portfolio in the same way that I currently have it. So that's something that I really need to have a good reason before I do it. So for the time being, the answer to that is no. But as Felix responded, I do that. I do open and close positions as regularly as I can to try and keep people in sync as they have funds and get your money working sooner than most popular investors. You said long term you're pessimistic. Elaborate on this a bit. Reasons, strategies, etc. In terms of climate change, I'm pessimistic. Strategies. Well, I think governments need to stop subsidizing fossil fuels would be a good start. I understand that we need them while we transition, but we probably shouldn't be helping those companies make profit from it. To be completely honest, in fact, I would if I was in charge of a country, I'd probably in some way mandate that companies must generate X% of electricity from renewables within 5 years. And I know 5 years is a short time frame, means they can't use nuclear if they go for that option probably. But yeah, that's the way that I would be approaching it. Some pretty rapid policy changes, and I think it needs to come from government really. Consumers are doing what they can, but government are the ones that really need to make this affordable and make it work economically. And that takes a massive shift, and we've got big problems of figuring out how to do that for things like housing and construction industry generally. And some of the other industries, medical. There's a lot of industries that are going to be hard to figure out how to make them sustainable over the long term. So we need to fix the easy things as soon as we can. And the easy things are, food and power, basically. Wonder how far behind chat I am. Pretty far. Pretty far. What do you invest in SPACs? You think it's worth or better when it comes out? Usually goes overvalued. Have you invested ever in SPACs before? Thinking FTCV. I mean, it's risky, right? It's kind of similar to startup investing. If you're really high conviction on the company, then yeah, absolutely go for it. But I mean, it's not that dissimilar to IPOs. I mean, most IPOs do badly after their first year or so. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. If you like the stock, then go for it. I wouldn't rule it out. I ruled it out kind of temporarily as a popular investor because copiers can't copy me if I invest in SPACs on eToro. So the trades don't get copied. But if they change that, then maybe I would at some point. But for the time being, there's nothing that really jumps out at me. Thoughts on Oatly? Recently got shorted, but can be a long-term success. Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. It's the one investment I kind of have in that space. It's very small at the moment. I think it's 0.25% of the portfolio currently. So very small, basically as small as it gets. But it's one that I'm watching quite closely. I really like the product. I really like the market that they're going into. I really think they've got very, very strong branding, and so I think they're going to have a good presence in supermarkets and in the deal with Starbucks and things like that is obviously very beneficial for them. I think the trend, especially in dairy. I posted something on Twitter yesterday that was a link to article from Vox talking about the state of the kind of meat and dairy alternative markets and how they're doing. And dairy alternatives is like the highlight because there's a lot of intolerance and stuff, and people are looking for a replacement. And I think it's one of the easier things for people to kind of replace. And cheaper as well, one of the cheaper things. So Oatly kind of stands out to me because, the only other brand that I can even think of that's kind of doing that's really got any sort of big brand presence in that space is Alpro, and it's really not the same. It's very much diluted because they make a lot of different products and stuff. So whereas Oatly is, obviously just oats. So I think they've got a good advantage there in terms of brand recognition. What do you think about the effects of mining to produce resources to create solar panels, wind turbines, etc.? Not to mention the processing of these materials. I'm assuming you mean recycling. Do you think this is a problem? Not really. Not really. Overall, I mean, yeah, it can be. There are different types of technologies in solar panels that have, I think they're like 4-letter acronyms that I can't remember off the top of my head. But there's like 4 or 5 different technologies that are used in solar panels, and they're exploring different options that reduce, especially the more toxic materials that are used. I can feel a sneeze coming. I need to hold for the sneeze. Okay, I think the sneeze is gone. Sorry. Yeah, so for solar panels, yeah, there are some not great materials in a lot of solar panels, but most of them are 100% recyclable, or at least 99%. It's just that we haven't really kind of scaled that up yet because there aren't enough panels for that to be a justifiable business model for a company yet, really, at least not on any large scale. But when enough solar panels are dying, people will do that. And that's the other thing with solar is that the life expectancy of solar has proven itself to be longer than everyone thought it would be. Originally, everyone was saying they'll last for 20 years, then it was 25, then it was 30, and in reality, there are solar panels that were made 40 years ago that are still working. Yes, of course, they're not anything like as efficient, and they have been overtaken by some margin in the amount of power that new panels make. So they will eventually need to be replaced. But the life expectancy is long. So if it is a problem, even if we decide that it is a problem, it's a problem that we don't have to really start dealing with on a large scale for at least another 25 years or so. And that's when it will really start to become a big potential headache. As for the mining, yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of resources, but what can you do? What's the alternative? As far as I'm concerned, it's the lesser evil. and that's what you need to go with. For winds, kind of hit and miss. I mean, there are actually some wooden wind turbines. Obviously, they're not very widespread, but wooden wind turbines are an option if we decide that we don't want to use some of the carbon fiber or whatever. The steel structures, obviously, steel is recyclable, so that's not too bad. It's the blades that are the real problem because, as I said, carbon fiber and variations of carbon fiber are what are most commonly used. But again, you can kind of patch them over and repair them potentially. And because we're starting to hit the limits of what is really feasible with that material for wind turbines, so about 167 meters, I think, is currently the biggest span for a wind turbine. Because we're starting to hit that, the companies involved are starting to research new materials and stuff. And if they don't, then potentially they can kind of be sort of repaired and refreshed and reused, maybe not waste quite so much of it. So it is more of a problem in wind than it is in solar, I think, but although it's not as toxic. But that's the way I look at it. And again, the question is, what is the alternative? If we have a good alternative, I'm happy to go for it. But for the time being, I think it's a necessity. Let me scroll down a bit. What is your opinion about Fed increase the interest rates, which will be discussed next month? Should we keep more cash in hand? Well, I mean, they discuss it every month, to be completely honest. It's almost a weekly discussion, really. I mean, it's, certainly if you consider more than just the US it is. But I mean, Powell's kind of reinforcing, hey, everything's okay to the markets on what feels like a weekly basis at this point. So yeah, no, we're not going to position to try and predict what's going to happen. I think it's much better to wait and react to what happens in terms of inflation and interest rates. I'm again, I'm not too concerned about it. We have a pretty diverse portfolio in terms of balance sheets for our companies. So there are companies that are going to benefit more in high interest rate environment and benefits that are benefiting currently from the low interest rates. I'm not massively concerned. Obviously, investing habits will also change as interest rates change because people will be able to get better interest elsewhere in some of the more kind of structured products, but it's not something that I'm losing sleep over. Could you explain better what do you mean when I post on to you? The other problem I have is liquidity. I'm unable to close some positions and replace them with new ones. Unable to source liquidity. Yeah, so basically, I cannot close some positions without phoning up eToro. Essentially, I mean, not necessarily phoning them up, but there are positions that I can't just trade through the platform like everyone else can. And there's a lot of stocks that I can't buy at all because of that. There are some stocks that are in my portfolio at the moment that if I got out of them, I probably wouldn't be able to buy back into. And the long-term solution, I mean, this is an ongoing problem that large fund managers just face generally to some extent. Not quite to the degree that I do in some ways. But for example, someone like Warren Buffett, but Berkshire Hathaway, they're not going to invest in a company that's got a market cap of $500 million because there might only be $100 million worth of shares even available, and if they buy them all, then they're massively pushing the price up. So they're potentially manipulating the markets. They're probably going to lose out on a lot of the potential alpha that would be left in that, like the price movement, the upwards price movement potential, because just by putting the order in, the price is going up because everyone sees the order come in, they put the prices up, they're eating through the order book in order. And yeah, so it affects the price like that, right? So that's unavoidable, full stop. That just happens. The more money you manage, the harder it is for you to invest in smaller things, and for it to remain worthwhile. And obviously, the less of the portfolio that you could even take up with it. So that's one problem. What compounds it a bit on eToro is obviously that it has to open the position for everyone at the same time and at the same price. So either it would be a case of because of the size of the orders, my orders could move the market slightly and change the price. And if it changes the price, then it means that not everyone's getting it at the same price potentially. So then eToro needs to kind of upgrade their system to essentially average that out to everyone and make sure that everyone then shares the slightly higher price or whatever it may be. There's potential in doing different types of orders. So essentially at the moment, eToro does fill or kill orders. So the order either gets filled in its entirety. So I put an order in to buy 800,000 shares of some penny stock or whatever it is. That goes through to the market and is absorbed by the order book. I've actually forgotten the point I was talking about now. This is what ADHD does to you. Just totally lost what I was even saying halfway through explaining it. Yeah, I've lost it. I can't even remember what I was saying now. It's gone. I'm not going to remember. I'll remember it in a minute once I've started talking about something else. But halfway through, I've entirely forgotten what it was. But the point is that it's difficult. It's a very difficult thing for eToro to really fix. I was talking about filler. There you go. I knew I'd remember it. Filler kill orders. Yeah. So the order goes through. The market executes it in its entirety, and if it can't execute it in its entirety, it just spits it back at you and says, "Nope, we can't fill it." And so that's the problem I'm having basically is that I send in an order, it's too big for the market to fill at that time within a reasonable time frame. So the market then spits it back to eToro and says, no, we're not letting you do it because there wasn't enough available for you to buy. So that's the problem that I'm essentially having, and they can fix that by doing like limit orders and things like that, so that I can kind of gradually open the position, and then it would appear a bit later. Maybe it would take 10 minutes to open the trade, or 20 minutes, or whatever it happens to be. That's a potential solution, but yeah, it's not a quick thing for them to fix, and also realistically, it's a relatively low priority for them because currently it's basically only me and maybe a couple of other Blackstar PIs that this is really affecting. And it's only for a minority of positions, so it's a lot easier for eToro to just say, well, just don't buy that stock. So yeah, that's the situation. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer, and I realise I lost track of everything I was saying halfway through. But yeah, there you go. Cineworld already answered that. Do you have traded cyber? Yeah, I'm not really into cybersecurity, to be honest. Yeah, not super into cybersecurity, to be honest. It's just too boring of a subject, and it's also too hard really to understand what the competitive advantage of a company is. I'm very product orientated. I like to understand the products and know where the advantage is, know what the moat is, and know the directions the company can kind of expand, where it can kind of increase margin or whatever, seeking out an advantage. And it's very hard to do that with software generally. To be honest, it depends on the type of software, but cybersecurity is, because of its very nature, one of those industries where you're not really going to get those kind of insights unless you are really, really quite technical. Thoughts on EV? Would you include some stock in your portfolio? If so, why? Neo ? I do. VW and Ford are what I am betting on at the moment. I know that seems like a strange play for electric vehicles because it's not Tesla or Neo or XPeng or whoever else. But those are the ones that I'm backing. I think that they have a really bright future in EVs. I think both of them are attacking slightly different segments of the market. Both of them are actually working together on quite a lot of things. They're sharing a lot of technology, which is cool. So they kind of complement each other as well as investments. And I just think that they're better value at the end of the day. I think they're much, much better value than a lot of the kind of really trendy EV companies. So that's where my money is at the moment. I don't see that changing, to be honest. I'm really quite certain on the positioning. But I do quite like Neo. So let's get real. If China and emerging markets aren't willing to do more than they do now, which is close to nothing, how is the Western world supposed to save the world? Also, more focus should be placed on saving ecosystems and deforestation versus trying to shame people in Europe to feel guilty flying on vacation. Yeah, I mean, the sensible thing in terms of flying is to have a frequent flyer policy. So your first flight, you don't have to pay any extra tax on, or maybe a very small amount of carbon tax. And then the more flights you take, the more your tax increases. Because honestly, if you're flying that much, what's wrong with you? Use Zoom. There's like use Zoom, or if you can afford to fly that many times a year, then start paying to help offset the impact that you're having. In terms of the West paying for it, I am very firmly in the camp of actually no, the West should pay for most of it because we did most of the polluting. It's all very well saying China's got lots of coal power fire stations and that they're doing most of the polluting now and blah blah blah, but yes they are, but they also only started doing that in the past 20 years, and Africa is not even on the radar, for the most part, apart from like Nigeria and stuff. It's the same as the overpopulation stuff. The overpopulation theory drives me completely insane when people are like, well, maybe everyone else needs to stop having so many kids and be more like Europe or more like America. But in reality, a US citizen uses 2 times more, has a carbon footprint that's roughly 2 times as much as someone from Europe, and people from Europe have a carbon footprint that's about 5 to 10 times higher than people in Southeast Asia, and people in Southeast Asia have a carbon footprint that's about 3 times bigger than people in Africa. So essentially for every 50 people that are born in the developing world is equivalent to one person in the Western world. So that's part of the way to look at it. The other thing is obviously that we are actually, a lot of the reason that they're producing so much CO2 and so many emissions is because we've outsourced everything to them. We get everything produced in China, everything built in China, and even software development and stuff is starting to be outsourced now. Raw materials are coming from Africa. So yeah, we're basically outsourcing the problem. We're the ones that are benefiting from these nice new products that we're buying and we're using in our economies to grow our economies. They're obviously benefiting as well, but to then say that it's entirely their responsibility because they mined that bit of lithium out of Chile, and which is then being used in a Tesla battery for someone in Europe to drive, that's entirely unfair and unreasonable. So yeah, Europe, and also we've got the most money. We're the people that can afford to do it. At the end of the day, you can't ask countries that have no money to to save the world, because they can't. They physically can't. Whereas in the Western world, we are more able to do that. So I think obviously there's a balancing act, right? Everyone has to do what they can. But that's my view on it. And rant. I'm sure it's very controversial, and when I get down further in the chat, I'll see everyone complaining about my opinion on it. But that's what I think. What do you think about Hyundai? Their EVs have been selling good. I really, really, really like Hyundai's EV mix. Actually, I think they're a very, very strong competitor in the space. Yeah, I mean Mercedes are good. Daimler and Mercedes are good as well. Yeah, Hyundai is one that I would be kind of interested in investing in, but as far as I'm aware, it's not tradable on eToro or anything. So, thoughts on Chinese stocks like Baba? They look like they're very undervalued, but realistically, I think they're value traps, at least until the sentiment changes on China. The West is just scared of investing in China at the moment for reasonably good reasons. Based on how China is trying to control capital and control mergers and acquisitions and stuff, it does limit the growth potential and introduce a lot of extra risks, especially in many ways for people investing from outside of China. So they're risky investments. They look really attractive, and at some point they will be. But until the sentiment changes and the West is kind of working more happily with China, and China kind of calms down a bit, it's probably worth avoiding, and that's what I'm doing. How do you handle the COVID situation yourself? I'm not sure if you mean personally or if you mean in terms of investing. Investing, I tilted the portfolio massively, went hugely defensive, shorted the Nasdaq, shorted the S&P, shorted the Russell, shorted a lot of European markets, moving it around as COVID was kind of outbreaking in different regions, and positioned into much more defensive plays and online stay-at-home plays and stuff. In terms of personally, basically I just don't go out very much. I've not been to any restaurants. I've not been. I mean, I've gone to play like mini golf and do a few things like that outdoors. But yeah, I just didn't go out very much. I've had my first vaccination. I get my second soon. I'm probably going to continue to avoid going to crowded places for, well, at least until I get my second vaccination. But perhaps until the end of this year, towards the end of this year, when hopefully case numbers start to come down a bit more. That's the way I handle it. But it doesn't really affect me that much because I like staying at home anyway. So, when do you think petrol cars will become a thing of the past? Probably 2030 to 2035. Hopefully sooner, because as I said, I think 2030 is when we start seeing a potential tipping point for the environment. So I'd really like to see it before then. There are some countries that are committed to 2030, and there are some car companies that are committed to 2030, 2035. So we'll see. I expect those to be brought forward, to be honest. Are you going to invest in the EV charging industry? I already do. We have ABBN on the CIX, Swiss markets. In the portfolio, they produce a lot of charging equipment, not only for cars, but also for buses and for trams and for railways and for boats and all sorts of stuff. And they make a lot of the stuff that goes inside, and they actually make a lot of stuff that then gets rebranded with someone else's logo. I also invest in Siemens, who also do a bunch of stuff in that space. And then VW owns part of Ionity, which is a big charging network in Europe as well. So yeah, I mean, we've got some reasonable exposure. Do you believe in different cryptos like ADA? Not so much Cardano. I do like Polkadot. I like I like Matic. I like a bunch of stuff. A bunch of the kind of big kind of multi-chain kind of style cryptos. I like a lot of. I mean, I like most areas of crypto. I'll like something from each kind of sector. Whether it's a privacy coin or if it's a exchange token or DeFi products or NFTs or whatever. Like, there's something in each of those industries pretty much that I like for the most part. But Cardano isn't one that I'm massively fond of. I'm not really against it per se. I just prefer Polkadot. Arrange face-to-face cocktails when restrictions are gone. I don't know about that. I'll let eToro organize it. Amazing to hear you talk so openly about your thoughts. Thank you, I guess. Thoughts on Chinese EV stocks? I kind of touched on that already. International fan meeting. Long time on Ubiquity. Do you have any more thoughts on it? They actually released an interesting video on YouTube today of one of their newer products. It's like a software suite for managing door locks and stuff. Yeah, I like them. I think they fit really nicely into a long-term play on smart homes and smart businesses. And they're they kind of take a very different approach to the likes of Cisco and you know the big networking players like that, in that they're a lot kind of more user friendly, if that makes sense, because of their operating system there that they run. Yeah, I like it. I've kind of so I've known about them sort of for a long time, and I did actually trade them about a year to probably 3 years ago now, for a bit, but then kind of stopped for a bit, and I've come back recently because of the fact that I bought a new house and because I've been looking at kind of how to network my house. And yeah, Ubiquiti is the one that I kind of went for after doing a lot of research, and luckily that research was also research that's useful in investing. So I figured that yeah, I like it. I like what they offer. Just generally speaking, I mean, like you don't need subscriptions and stuff for a lot of Ubiquiti stuff as well, which is quite nice. Because I think I was talking about this on Bloomberg recently about if subscriber and subscription fatigue is starting to set in with the public, and I think that's actually pretty bang on. I think people are starting to get tired of having a subscription to Netflix and a subscription to their Ring doorbell and a subscription for Amazon Prime and a subscription for this, a subscription for that, a subscription for their favorite beard shaving oil to be delivered to their house, whatever it is. There's a lot of subscriptions these days, and I think actually we're starting to see some sectors of society kind of move back away from that and move back to the way things were, of having their own physical music and their own physical copies of things to watch and ownership of their own stuff again. So that's kind of a macro trend that is an interesting one to think about, I think, and that's another thing that Ubiquiti plays into a little bit. Thoughts on UK fully reopening and the pingdemic? Do you think it will be more harm than good economically? It's pretty borderline. Pretty borderline. I mean, realistically, there's going to be a bunch of people like me who aren't purposefully even more cautious now than I would have been 4 weeks ago, because I mean the Delta variant is just everywhere, and I don't want it. So to some extent, opening up like this has made a lot of people actually retreat back inwards again and stay inside again. So I don't think that outweighs the number of people going out, but certainly it doesn't make it like a real full reopening, like it would be if there were 0 cases or something. In terms of the pingdemic, yeah, I mean, I kind of hate the terminology to some extent. My girlfriend reminded me or just told me about a tweet my friend did that said that it reminded them of in the Chernobyl HBO series, where they turned off the beeping from their geicometers. What are they called? I can't remember the radiation meters, because it was beeping all the time, and they're like, "Oh, we should turn off the beeping." And obviously, we know how that ended pretty badly. Yeah, it's kind of similar, isn't it? Thoughts on AMD, Nvidia, and GPU market? Yeah, I mean, semiconductor constraints are going to continue for probably another year at this point, I think. Yeah, I mean, there's not really an end in sight to that. It's kind of frustrating because, to a large extent, it's giving Intel a bit of a free pass, because AMD's sold out of everything, Nvidia's sold out of everything. Then the people who are next in line down the rung with an inferior product are actually seeing a boost to sales that perhaps they wouldn't if there wasn't a global semiconductor shortage. And obviously, Intel has an advantage in that they have their own fab as well, so they're better able to scale up to demand. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's much more to say than that, really. It's a case of waiting and watching. I still think the technology they have is good, the R&D is good. I like the direction that they're going in. I like everything they've been doing. No complaints, really. I plan on holding on to both of them. My Nvidia exposure's gone down a bit recently, but not really because I'm bearish as such. It's just that with the stock split and everything else, I figured it was a good time to take a bit of money off the table and kind of wait for a better entry. Do you have any? I may have skipped some. I just got here. Hello, welcome. Intel's earning report will be released. Any thoughts? Yeah, what I just said. I think they're going to do okay because everyone else has sold out of stuff. That's about it. I'm not bullish on Intel, but I'm not particularly bearish in the short term, or the long term actually. I'm bearish in the medium term for Intel. Do you have any ethical concerns regards to crypto, mainly Ethereum, being used by influencers to scam inexperienced investors? Yeah, that's pretty sucky. If you watch, what's his name? This guy on YouTube I watch who just uncovered a scam involving a bunch of members of FaZe Clan who were scamming their followers. That was pretty saddening to see. But I mean, it doesn't surprise me that much when you look at the people involved. I mean, there's only so much you can do, right? To a large extent, obviously not entirely true, but to a large extent, these people, if they didn't get scammed by something in Ethereum, they would get scammed by something elsewhere, some other fancy investment. Yeah, I mean, there's not that much you can do about it. I think really the only thing you can kind of do is say that it would be nice to see more resources, more policing resources dedicated towards this kind of stuff, because I mean it's just rife, really, isn't it? I mean, who's policing, especially the influencer side of things? Who's policing these people? You know, it's hard enough to even get them to admit when they're doing an advertisement during a stream or a Instagram post or whatever. Half of them don't even, record it as an ad, even though it is product placement and stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like regulation just generally around that industry of influencers probably needs a pretty hefty update. Well, I mean, there aren't any really, are there? There's basically no rules around influence since influencers became a thing. And actually, I think this goes a bit further than that, because if you look at some of the stuff Elon Musk has done, and then the little slap on the wrists he's had from the SEC when he was talking about funding secured 420, and the Dogecoin tweets and stuff. I mean, it's kind of criminal, really. It's fascinating that people are still such a big fan of someone who, you know, yeah, he may have done it for as a joke, and a lot of people will see the funny side. I mean, some of his jokes are pretty funny, but at the same time, you've got to take a bit more responsibility when you're an influencer, and that you influence people. And some of those people are maybe not quite so able to understand sarcasm or whatever, or make qualified investing decisions. What do you think of inflation worries? Yeah, I mean, we touched on it a bit earlier. It's just a case of every week you wait and see what the Fed say. Tune into Christine Lagarde and see what she's saying. That's all you can really do. You look at the CPI numbers. You look at if the rental market's improving or whatever. There's not much more you can do than that, really. I think positioning preemptively is kind of risky and dangerous, and would probably cost more than it would save you. Because realistically, this could be a year out. It could be 3 months away. It could not happen. It could turn out that the economy goes through a brief period of inflation and then everything kind of recovers pretty happily, and it wasn't too much and it's not too bad. So yeah, it's one of those things you just kind of need to watch, really, and monitor and adjust your portfolio as new information comes out. But acting preemptively, I think, is dangerous. Yeah, glass fiber. It was glass fiber. You're right. You are entirely correct. Which isn't a great material in its own right. What are your expectations on Ford in the next few 2 to 5 years? Yeah, so I think the next two are obviously the key. To be honest, even the next year I would say is key. Very excited to see where they go next. We know about the Ford Transit. Obviously, the F-150 is coming, but it's about what models are they going to pick out of their lineup to electrify next. And how do they measure up? And I think Ford is actually lacking a bit in terms of modernizing production as well. Like they aren't like VW has plastered every building they own in solar panels at this point. And they've updated everything to really gear towards EVs, and a lot of their manufacturing facilities in Germany, and I think Hyundai have done the same. They're really investing a lot. Ford have got some very good investments in other businesses like Argo AI and in Velodyne and in Rivian and stuff like that, and that it feels like they're kind of outsourcing a lot of the changes that they should really start doing themselves, potentially. But it's not necessarily a bad plan. Like the investments they've done there have been very, very good, and working well for them so far. I think they're treading it pretty well at the moment. But I would really like to see them start moving and committing a bit more than they are. But it's still early. I think this year is when hopefully we'll see an announcement of what's kind of coming next. I look forward to that earnings call, see what they say there. But I'm expecting, the next kind of wave of electrification to kind of be announced and planned pretty soon. So that's really what I'm looking for, and that's going to be very important. Which vehicles they go for, which markets they try to attack. It seems like they're going for like the fleet markets and kind of enterprise focused vehicles more than anything else. The Mustang, I think, is basically an exception and was more a proof of concept of the technology and to try and grab some attention and for PR to some extent. But it has been very successful. So maybe they will do a few regular cars as well. I mean, they need to do at least a couple, I think. But that's kind of what I'm looking at. Where they're going to go, who knows? You just need to monitor these things. You build your expectations of where you think things should go, and then you wait and you look at how the rest of the wider market's doing, and how they're kind of comparing and stacking up against that. And if I feel like they start lagging, I'll take my profits and leave. That's the way it goes. Let's see, how long have I been streaming? Okay, not too bad. I'm almost caught up on questions, almost back onto the page. So once I've caught up on questions, I think when I've got 20 minutes, maybe in 20 minutes from now, I'll go through the questions that are on eToro, just so that I can satisfy anything there that was missed, and answer those. And then after that, I'll head out. So if you've got any final questions you want to ask, then type them now, and then maybe in 5 minutes or something, my girlfriend can just write in text that it's the cut-off point where I should go and do the other ones, and then I'll go and do those at that point when I've got that far. Going to say hello and say that you're the king. Oh dear, amazing. Would you mind share your Monday to Friday routine? I have no routine. I don't get up and read a thing in the morning and then do this and then do that. I get up when I wake up, within reason, as long as I'm up before the markets. That's not too bad. As long as I go to bed before the sun starts to come up, that's not too bad. I work when I'm in the mood to work. Again, within reason. If there are earnings calls and I'm not in the mood for an earnings call, then I'll prioritize, and I'll pick the ones that are really important to listen to, and the ones that aren't, I'll wait and do it another time, or sometimes even just ignore it and just read the notes. if it's not super important. And the same goes with research. I don't sit down and say, "Oh, today I've scheduled to research this industry." I browse around the internet, around YouTube, around podcasts, Twitter, whatever, eToro, the various tools I use, Seeking Alpha, etc. See what catches my attention, and then I'll kind of dive down a rabbit hole as and when I kind of feel like it. That's just the way I work, and probably that's just because I have ADHD. But maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe there's something to it. But that's the way I tend to operate. It's not particularly useful for people that want to try and learn from me, which is why I try and point out that I'm not a great person to learn from. But that's pretty much the way I do things. Pretty chaotic, I know. But it works. Works for me. eToro beta, what's good in the UI? Well, it's only like one UI element. I mean, they keep doing this. They keep updating like single parts one at a time. And the most recent thing they did was the news feed. And yeah, it's quite nice. There's some pretty nice features. I can see the top 5 winners and losers in terms of fluctuation out of my watch lists. That's already actually been quite useful. So I'm pretty happy about that. There's a few other cool things in there. There's nothing super secret, nothing incredible, nothing like crazy to write home about. But yeah, it's just nice to see new stuff. I'm not reading these in order at all. Do you use Ichimoku? Reading a book about it, and it's very interesting. No, I don't really rely on technical analysis very much at all, to be honest. I use Fibonacci's relative strength index, stop and reverses, moving averages, obviously, candlestick patterns. That's pretty much it, really. Support and resistance, trend lines, channels. Really pretty basic stuff. And I don't really use it that often. I barely even draw on charts anymore. I just look at it, I can see the pattern. Don't even need to draw it because I can already see what it is, and I'm like, okay, cool. That either confirms or goes against what I'm currently thinking based on fundamentals. How do you see the price of Bitcoin moving in the short term? Probably more sideways. Probably just more sideways, to be honest. Don't underestimate how long something can go sideways for. I learned that through 2014 and 15 in crypto, where it went sideways for like 2.5 years. That was boring, I can tell you. Have you considered Dell? I've considered Dell. I mean, I quite like a lot of the stuff that Dell does, but I also think that they're, to some extent, under threat just from the innovation that's going on, and also the move away from working in offices as well. I mean, a lot of their products are really focused on traditional office environments, so that's maybe not so much in their favor. Yeah, I think they pay a reasonable dividend as well, but yeah, I haven't looked at them. I think if I was going to go for a company in that space, it would probably be I don't know. It'd probably be like Lenovo or maybe HP, someone like that. I think HP had done pretty well recently. I like their Owen gaming brand and stuff and how they handled that, and I think their server stuff is still pretty reasonable. So. New positions, UI and CSX. Yeah, so CSX, really, if you go all the way back to Q3 of last year, maybe even Q2, I've been talking about wanting to invest more in railways and rail infrastructure, and partially for passenger rail, partially for freight as well. I just see, I mean, on paper, it's the cheapest way of moving something currently. I mean, apart from like walking it or using a bicycle, I suppose. But in terms of freight, it's cheaper than lorries by roughly 3x. It's cheaper than shipping slightly, but it kind of depends on where you're sending it, right? Certainly cheaper than flying, obviously. And so, yeah, I like it for those reasons, and also it's the most sustainable of all of those options as well. An awful lot of trains run on electricity and can very easily be electrified, which means that they can use potentially entirely renewable mix of energy. But it is kind of a hub and spoke operation, right? Like, you can't build a railway to someone's house to do a last mile delivery, so you're still relying on trucks and things. But yeah, I like it because it's greener and it's cheaper. And in the US especially, it's old, and being old is kind of a good thing, because it means that there's a lot of room for improvement. Um, the railroads in the US are pretty dated. They don't have high speed passenger rail. They don't really have even reasonable speed freight, to be honest. And most of their locomotives at CSX are diesel. So like it's not that clean at the moment. Still cleaner than a truck, but that means that there's lots and lots of room for improvement. And if green subsidies, and we kind of see this wave of policy change come in, investing in making everything greener, then there's a really big opportunity to both increase efficiency and speed, and also make things more sustainable in that industry. And the cool thing about the American railways is that, generally speaking, these companies own the railroads that they're running their trains along. And since passenger rail is starting to develop in the US slowly, again, and we've got things like Brightline in Florida and stuff like that, generally these companies are going to pay the existing railroad giants to just use their tracks. So they'll pay a fee to lease out the tracks, or pay for the land to build their own track alongside it, or whatever. So yeah, there's all sorts of opportunity here, and then on top of that, you've got Biden's infrastructure bill. The second biggest category that they're spending money on from that is railways. So a lot of that is going to go to Union Pacific and CSX, and the other big rail companies in the US. So yeah, there's a lot of long-term good tailwinds. On top of that, CSX has had a CEO change not that long ago. It came down from Canada, from I'm not sure if it was Canadian National or if it was Canadian Pacific Railways. I think it was Canadian Pacific. But anyway, he's done a really good job at cutting costs and kind of making things a lot more efficient again, and changing the way that they move stuff, and how long trains stay stopped and things like that. So yeah, lots and lots of improvements under that new leadership, and yeah, I just see a lot of tailwinds for it. So that's the reasoning for CSX. UI is more about smart homes and smart small medium enterprise business. They are trying to edge their way into the bigger stuff as well. I don't know how successful that's going to be, but really, I actually see the biggest potential here. Honestly, I really see as being smart homes, because their stuff is more user friendly than most of their competitors, and doesn't require a subscription for a lot of the kind of things that people would use on a smart house. And they make a lot of the products that you would need to run a smart house, and optimize it. And I know that they're already working with some home builders in a couple of different countries on that kind of stuff. So that's pretty exciting. And just generally, I think that their approach to networking is really cool and innovative and interesting. So that's the reason behind that one. There are actually two other companies that I've invested in as well, which is Laser and Velodyne, who are both LiDAR technology companies as well. So that was a really long answer. And yes, CoffeeZilla is the person I was talking about earlier. Thanks for whoever said that. How do you feel about XRP long term? Or are you not much into crypto scene still? Yeah, I'm still not looking at it too much. I still have the same opinion of XRP. I think if it was going to work, I think it probably would have worked by now. I think it's taking too long. And like when you look at what Goldman Sachs and JPM and a lot of the other banks are doing, they're making their own blockchains based off Ethereum, or they're using Ethereum directly, or they're using Bitcoin, and they're sending billions of dollars every single day on those networks and not on XRP. So that for me bodes pretty badly for XRP, I'm afraid. So I'm not really bullish on XRP. What do you think about Walt Disney? Nice chap. Nah, I don't know anything about Walt Disney himself, but the company Disney, yeah, I like it. It's good reopening play, decent long-term play, awful lot of brand value. Yeah, I mean they're gonna be one of the big players in the entertainment space, and I think yeah, they really know how to kind of build a whole brand and experience like no one else really. Yeah, I like them. Pay nice dividends, good safe stock. I own a tiny bit in the portfolio. What do you think about all the news to possible market crash at the end of the year? Yeah, I talked about it. Don't think it's going to happen. Sorry if you missed it, but I answered it pretty near the start, so you can watch it on YouTube if you missed it. Looking at the time, I'll go through a couple more. Oh, I can actually see Leanne's question cut off in a second anyway, so I'll answer these last few. Stellantis, why do you see them among the other car manufacturers? Kind of far behind, really. Yeah, kind of far behind. I haven't like properly looked into them, but I mean, last time I did, yeah, I mean they were pretty far behind. I don't know what to tell you really. It seemed like they were behind on most things. Yeah, probably near the back of my list of who to invest in, along with the Japanese car companies, I'm afraid. What do you think of Aero? Yeah, I think it's cool. Be interested to see what happens to the IPO, what the valuation is and stuff. I mean, I'm mainly interested in it because of Ford's stake, to be honest. Wondering if Ford are going to cash out or what they're going to do, but yeah, it's interesting. Wait, is it Aero or Ario? I can't remember which way around it is. You might be talking about a different suite of smart home products. It's got a very similar name, which is a brand for another company. It's Anchor, maybe. No, it's not Anchor. Someone else. But either way, I've probably misunderstood the question by now, so whatever. What do you think of Airbnb? Seems to be underperforming, although there is some positive COVID travel news. Yeah, I think they've been, well, I mean, the stock's been underperforming. I'm not necessarily convinced that the company has been underperforming. I think the company's done pretty well. I think it's just a good long-term, safe-ish growth stock. To be honest, like the competition, Booking.com, they are moving. They're not sitting still, but it's about kind of rebranding themselves. Not sure how successful they're going to be in that. Trying to convince people that they're really competing with Airbnb and that it's the same product. I just don't see that being an easy thing for them to kind of rebrand and kind of capture the public on. I think Airbnb's already got a lot of brand loyalty for that, and I think they continue to just be a bit more innovative. And I'm expecting that if anyone's going to do some more cool stuff in the space, it's probably going to be Airbnb, and that's one of the reasons I like them. But it is a risky play, given what's going on with COVID. I think it isn't an easy area to be invested in. I've hit the question cut off. As Leanne has posted. There's only a few after it, but either way, I'm not going to answer it, apart from the one about Flow, because I do like Flow. Thoughts on Flow, still holding? Yeah, I'm still holding. Still like it. Concerned about the unlocked coins? A little bit. A little bit. yeah, that's it for the questions from here. I'm gonna quickly check through the ones on eToro, see what's been asked on there. I tell you what, you can come along for the ride with me. Let's go see what people have been asking. Make sure I'm in the right one. So it's this one. Oh, there's only 2 comments. What? How? There are only 2 comments. Okay, hold on. Was everyone just talking on this one still? Did I pin it? There's only 2 comments. What? I'm sure there were more comments earlier. Can you go live on YouTube simultaneously as well? Oh, maybe. It's not a bad idea. I don't know. It'd be a lot of. I wouldn't be able to read the chat of both, so it's kind of pointless. Command and Conquer or Red Alert? That's a good question. Wait, has it posted it twice? No, that's live stream. That's a performance update. Well, let's have a look through these ones instead then. It doesn't look like there's much here, to be honest. Oh no, this is the right one. Maybe. Yeah, this is the right one. There's not many questions yet. Business of Jumia. That's a pretty good one to talk about. Jumia's I think Jumia's gone through a lot of hypocrisy, and I think the hype around it has died down. The hype against it has died down. There were some short sellers that came out strongly against it, and then I'm trying to remember which bank it was. So maybe Citibank, who were one of the backers of the IPO, came out and debunked a bunch of those claims. A lot of kind of questionable stuff about if their numbers are real and if they can fend off Alibaba, who are also moving into Africa in a pretty big way. I think Jumia operates in more countries than Alibaba does at the moment, and there's also a lot of debate about is it really an African company, which to some extent is kind of irrelevant because it's based in Africa. The business they do is in Africa, and the economy that they're kind of benefiting in the market is Africa. So I don't think it's that relevant. I think it's one of those companies, honestly, where you do kind of just want to own it just because of the exposure to Africa. It's kind of like Meli. I don't know how you pronounce it in Latin America. Big e-commerce company does it does a lot more than e-commerce. They do food delivery, they do some smart products, they do I don't know if they've started doing like enterprise software and things like that yet, but they do quite a lot. They are properly trying to emulate Alibaba and Amazon, and go after that space, but for Africa. And I think because Africa is such a different market and different kind of demographic in terms of the infrastructure or lack of infrastructure that they have in a lot of those countries, in terms of payments even, makes it hard for other companies to move into that space effectively. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Alibaba, or if Meli decided to, then perhaps they could as well, because their market is more similar in terms of the limitations and what they're dealing with in their local markets. But yeah, I think they've got a pretty strong advantage just from the kind of home turf advantage, essentially, and being a company that's solely focused on that region. So I like them. They're high risk. They're very high risk, actually. But I think it's one of those companies that's worth taking a punt on, because if they do turn into the Amazon of Africa, and Africa is expected to grow dramatically in terms of its economy over the next decade or so, one of the highest growth markets in the world, then I think it's just a story that you need to be part of, really. And also, it does feel, it's kind of a feel-good investment to some extent. Obviously, it's a bit like Amazon, right? Like, they're going to have pretty poor working conditions potentially, and union disputes and all sorts of things like that. But it is, at the end of the day, a story about Africa's first big global scale tech company. and you got to kind of support that, I think. And yeah, I think it offers nice diversification in the portfolio. Let's see what this is. China mining. It's difficult because it's. Oh, I've gone to a profile now. Sorry about that. I'm sure most of you are tuning off by now. And yeah, I will show the dashboard at the end just before I stop, because why not? Prohibits mining calling on producers to close their companies. What's going on with China, with batteries, with cryptocurrency mining? Yeah, it's kind of a messy situation in China generally. I kind of support them on the cryptocurrency stuff. It was causing unnecessary pressure on their electrical grid, and actually it was having a real carbon impact. The miners that were based in China, there's no denying it. So I'm thinking about, like, if I was in charge of China, would I make a similar decision? Yeah, I mean, probably, or I'd certainly at least tax them a lot more, or maybe set some standards on where they get the power or something. Because China's growing rapidly, and they have to keep building more power stations, and that was just making the problem harder for them. So yeah, I understand that. Boss of Tesla, I'm assuming she's talking about Elon's statements on how green it is. Yeah, I mean, kind of idiotic, really. In the global perspective, bitcoins and cryptocurrencies generally aren't. They're not bad for the environment inherently. They just use power, and you can generate power cleanly. So it doesn't really matter, and in many ways, it actually helps incentivize green energy. I've talked about this at length in my previous stream before as well. So, essentially, miners are going to move to where electricity is cheapest. Electricity is cheapest where it's renewable or where they've got too much of it. So, essentially, miners are arbitraging the energy market. They are soaking up extra power that wouldn't normally be used, kind of like a battery, and putting it to some sort of a use. So I think overall it's a kind of neutral effect on the environment. And the grid mix is, if you look at the reports that came out of Cambridge, the grid mix is actually better than a lot of other industries, most industries, in fact. In fact, most countries, to be honest. So technically, Bitcoin's greener than most countries in terms of how they choose their power. Most of these people are just wishing me luck on my exams and telling me to enjoy my holiday. Well, that's an interesting question. Is the Popular Investor Program forcing you to always have open trades, or could you close all your trades and take a real holiday? I could take a real holiday if I wanted to. I think I would probably have to, tell eToro so that they know that I'm doing it. But yeah, they're not forcing me to trade all the time or forcing me to do anything. They're pretty sensible in their approach to it. And of course, when will you be open to new copies? Well, when will it be on YouTube? Well, it'll be on YouTube tomorrow because I'm leaving tomorrow, so it has to be on before I leave. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to upload it because, well, I could, I suppose, but it'd be a lot easier to do it on this PC than someone else's Wi-Fi. So yeah, it'll be up tomorrow. Tomorrow morning should be up on YouTube. And in terms of when I'll be open for new copiers, who knows? I don't see it happening anytime soon. Could be years, to be honest. It could be years until I'm copyable again. If I were to guess, I would guess at least another year. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope I'm surprised by eToro, but I think that's the case. Do we, as copiers of your portfolio, have a % of money not invested? I'm not sure what you mean by that. You have exactly what my portfolio is. Like if it's in sync, which if you just added funds, then it won't be. But generally, it should be pretty synced up, and it will always trend towards resyncing itself automatically over time. But if you've been copying me, let's say non-stop for 4 years, then your portfolio should exactly match mine, or certainly be very, very close to it, which means that you would have the same percentage of cash available as I do here. So you can see I've got basically 1% cash at the moment. So you should have 1% cash as well. I promised I'd show the dashboard as well. So here's the dashboard. There's nothing that exciting on here really. I can see the number of copiers, how it's growing, AUM at the moment, some metrics. You can see my copiers very steadily going down as people leave or people hit stop losses or whatever. This is the AUM. As you can see, it basically hangs around 150. It has done ever since I got copy blocked. Number of people that have left recently doesn't show joined, obviously, and yeah, this bit doesn't show up on here, but and a few stats at the bottom. So 90% copiers profitable, which is nice. The amount of cash flow in, average number of days. So almost the average copy duration is 1 year now, which is pretty cool. That's it. That's all there is. Can you see the new homepage beta? Yeah, why not? I don't think eToro have put any sort of embargo on it. Whatever. I'll get in trouble maybe. I don't think I will. Yeah, this is it's pretty nice. You can change this. I asked them to change this and add a year-to-date to this. Would be really nice. Because you can see 3 months, 6 months. It will show you deposits, which is really cool. This is just some sort of error that eToro had, I think, back then on that day. I think that was when they're having their downtime issues, and yeah, it just added money and then removed it immediately. It didn't make any impact on anything, but it shows up on here, which is kind of funny. And you can see 12 months up 75%, 6 months 13, 3 months is going to be like 5 or something. Yeah, 1 month, and then 1 week. And yeah, it shows you kind of overview. Here's the nice little chart. This is really nice. Shows some people in portfolios, watch lists. I haven't used these watch lists in a really long time, so it's kind of hilarious that they're here. Because obviously I don't care about people, but and then the same the other way around. So you can see the big losers. So this is my recent investment. It's not going too well. DDD, very small position, also not doing too well. Shows the little portfolio symbol if it's in your portfolio. And it's got, you know, a few other little bits and bobs, and then it's just the news feed as normal. But yeah, it's nice. And these tickers at the top, again, I said, like, can we change what's up there? Because I don't care about what oil was doing. It'd be nice to like be able to favorite things and put them up there. It's really cool. I like it. Hopefully eToro don't tell me off for showing it. Maybe Tal's watching right now and like screaming at someone to tell me off. Why do you have only, quote, 100k on the eToro? Because I just bought a house, basically, and in cash. And I have huge tax bills. And I didn't start off rich when I started investing, and I do have other investments outside of eToro. I've got money in crypto and money in startups and a few other things here and there. But, yeah, that's why. And the other, of course, the main reason, really, even if I hadn't have bought the house, is that every time I add funds, it asks every single copier to add funds. So it would require all of my copiers to add funds, or it would desync them, and that's an awful lot of hassle to put people through. So you know, if I were to do it, I would probably just try and work with eToro to find some way of me copying myself or something. Yeah, I'm invested in a bunch of startups, mainly UK based. The Vegan Kind supermarket is one of them. Do you expect corrections after big tech earnings? No. Not really. The financials didn't do too well on earnings, but at the moment, most companies are beating on earnings, so earnings looks okay. Okay, I think I said that I'd go for 2 hours, and we're basically bang on 2 hours. So I'm gonna call it a day now. Thank you for watching, everyone. As usual, check out my my Discord. You can type !Discord in chat. Please don't all do it at once because I know you're going to do that as soon as I say it. To join my Discord server, you can jump on to Twitter and follow me at Jaynemesis. The same on Instagram at Jaynemesis. YouTube is Jaynemesis. eToro is Jaynemesis. I'm basically Jaynemesis everywhere. I don't have a Facebook, so if you see me on Facebook, you're being scammed. I will never message you on WhatsApp or Telegram. You are also being scammed if I do that. Generally speaking, don't trust it unless you can literally see my face talking. Yeah. But be careful because there are a lot of people. Well, not a lot of people, but there are people out there impersonating me, trying to scam people. Really upsetting, but there's not much I can do about it apart from try and warn you guys as regularly as I can. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. Next videos this will be up on YouTube tomorrow, and then again, like Q3 is the next time I'll be doing this. So as I do every time, I do my Q3 report, and then I'll do Q3 Q&A afterwards 1 week later. So you can look forward to that. And obviously I'll be on the eToro feeds as well, so you can chat to me on there, chat to me on Discord, chat to me on social media. That's it. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you guys next time.